Hey guys, today we are talking about choline and TMAO, or trimethylamine oxide. We're continuing this series where hopefully once a day, most of the time, I'm going to pop in and answer one question that I select from social media. If you look in the description, and I'll post this in the chat too, if you want a more in-depth Q&A with me where you can ask me about anything that's within my realm of capability to answer, instead of the way I do it here is I pick one question and at the end of it, answering that question, I'll look at the chat and pick out the highly relevant questions that are clarification or highly related topics and go through some of those. There's a link in the description in the chat. You can sign up for the Masterpass at 8 p.m. is when the next Masterpass live Zoom Q&A is going to be. So that's in 24 minutes. So I got to kind of keep this to 20 minutes. Basic difference is there's 2 hours. You can hop on the webcam or you can ask your question in the chat by name or anonymous, however you want. And you can ask me about anything. And you'll get basically a guaranteed answer. Whereas here I'm kind of keeping it to one topic. Anyway, see the chat for that and for other ways that you can support my work. And I'm not a doctor, and it's not medical advice. And with that, let's get straight to the question. So I'm going to share my screen. And this question is on the green tea and fatty liver disease video from a couple days ago, but this is about choline. And RTL says, speaking parenthetically of choline, does choline supplementation run the risk of significantly raising TMAO? And I've written about this a lot, and there's been some stuff that's come out since I've written about it. It's possible there's stuff that came out even more recently that I haven't seen yet, but I'm going to show you what I know to be the most recent stuff that kind of is highly relevant to this. So I'm going to share my screen for that as well. Well, before I do that, I guess the TLDR of this, or TLDW, till I'm going to watch, is if you get your choline from phosphatidylcholine or from eggs or other food sources of phosphatidylcholine, and Google Master John choline database for a database on food sources of choline, then depending on your gut microbiome, you may generate a small amount of TMAO, but that TMAO is well below, even in people who generate a lot of TMAO from eggs, the TMAO is well below what's been shown to have any effect in humans on anything. And it's well below what you would get from a choline bitartrate supplement. And it's, I believe this is correct, it's orders of magnitude below what you would get from fish. And so one of the the whole TMAO causes heart disease crowd, one of the things I think they need to grapple with in order to be taken seriously, at least by me, is you can pick on eggs and beef as kind of whipping boys for heart disease risk and pick the next bad thing to say about them. But traditionally, fish have not generally been argued to be bad for heart disease risk. And you have to explain why fish are not 10 to 100 to 1,000 times worse for heart disease risk than beef and eggs are if TMAO is the main driver, because that's around the order of TMAO exposure that they cause relative to one another. Okay, so that's the short answer. So to make that even shorter, I'm not too worried about TMAO generated from food, period. But eggs are not particularly, and phosphatidylcholine sources in general are among the least likely food sources of choline, and way less likely than most supplements of choline to rise TMAO anyway. And the degree to which they rise TMAO probably doesn't matter. So that's the short end of it. But let's look at some of the data. So now I'm going to share my screen. All right, so let's first. All right, first we're going to look at the study from the choline causes TMAO causes heart disease crowd, and this is from 2017. Gut microbe-generated TMAO from dietary choline is prothrombotic in subjects, and this is published by the Cleveland Clinic, where the center of the TMAO causes heart disease data comes from. And so first of all, let's look at what they did. So somewhere in here they say that this is choline bitartrate. I believe they say that. Maybe the supplements, maybe the methods are supplementary. 1 second. You have this wrong. Okay, so we prospectively recruited healthy vegans, vegetarians, and omnivores with no preceding history of antibiotics or probiotics. This was blah, 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 informed consent. They were given, oh, I see. It wasn't bitartrate, it was bisulfate. So they gave oral choline supplements as choline bisulfate for 500 milligrams twice daily, which gives, that looks like this is 500 milligrams of the salt, choline bisulfate, and this yields 450 milligrams of total choline per day for 2 months with monthly blinded testing after an overnight fast. And they looked at vegan, vegetarian group, and omnivores to show both of them having a 10-fold increase in plasma TMAO at both the 1 and 2 month periods, with corresponding enhanced platelet aggregation responses to submaximal adenosine diphosphate. So basically what they're doing is they're ex vivo, meaning outside the human body, they're taking the blood and showing that if they dump pro-clotting chemicals onto the blood, the clotting response that they get from that will be significantly greater and they're attributing that to the TMAO. And that it's important to note that that does not mean that there's actually increased clotting happening in these people. It is an ex vivo or in vitro measurement that is suggestive of the potential to have greater clotting risk. But given that when you eat a food, there are thousands of things that can change in your blood, you can't rule out that on the one hand, the platelets are more sensitive to being stimulated by ADP, but on the other hand, other things have changed to make them less stimulated. I mean, just as an example, things that regulate clotting like ADP, extracellular ADP, or ionic calcium could have been changed that negate that ex vivo measurement from having any relevance at all. So it's critically important to show that this shows nothing at all about heart disease risk, except something hypothetical. But nevertheless, let's take it at face value and assume that this is, to put another way, on a scale of 1 to 10, this brings my concern about TMAO up to a 3. So it's meaningful, but it doesn't really, it's not even above 5 where I'm net concerned about TMAO. Okay, so that's the platelet aggregation. Somewhere in here is the TMAO micromolar. The TMA, I guess I should have reviewed this so I could interpret more quickly. Okay, I see. So on the bottom axis, they don't graph the TMAO response. They put it on, they just enumerate it, the mean TMAO response. And the TMAO response you're looking at is 27, is going up from around 2.5 micromolar to 27.2 micromolar in the vegans or vegetarians at 1 month of choline bisulfate feeding, and it's going up to 36.4 micromolar in the omnivore group And this presumably reflects a difference in their microbiome, where the omnivores have a microbiome that is more favorable to generating TMAO from choline. And then at 2 months, the TMAO levels are a little bit higher, but not too much. In green, vegans and vegetarians, they are 28.9 versus 27.2. And in omnivores, they're 36.8 versus 36.4. So basically at 1 and 2 months, they're almost identical, but they've gone up around tenfold or more to a minimum of, let's say, 27 micromolar. And then actually graphed here is the aggregation index. And so this is when they dumped ADP on their blood outside of their body, how much aggregation was there as a percentage of the maximal response. And you can see here the percentage of the maximum response before at baseline was a little over 40%. But then in the vegans and vegetarians, choline supplementation brought this up to, say, 48%-ish or so. By the 2 month mark, it was up to 50% of the vegans and vegetarians. And at 1 and 2 months, it was similarly around 58%-ish in the omnivores. And then they plotted the correlation over here and showed that the plasma TMAO correlates with the aggregation response in that assay. And I think one thing to notice is that if you look at this correlation, you kind of see this vertical stick on the left side, and then you see this start to develop a positive correlation over here, which is, it's generally taking off at least above 20 micromolar before this correlation starts to materialize, and the mean was 27 micromolar. So I think it's reasonable to say that we're looking at something like when you get plasma TMAO above 20 micromolar, and especially into the just comparing omnivores and vegans over here, especially into the 30s is when you get a pretty strong TMAO response, clotting response, platelet aggregation potential response in relationship to TMAO. And it sort of looks like it plateaus. There's not really much data here, so it's hard to say. But it kind of looks like that response plateaus around 60 micromolar. So probably, if you get your TMAO up to 20, but especially if you get up to 30, then particularly in the range of 30 to 60, you're going to get some kind of increased potential clotting response, providing you have a stimulus to provoke the clotting in response to TMAO levels in the 30 to 60 range. Okay, now let's look at the effect of, this is from Stephen Ziesel's group, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who is one of the longtime preeminent experts on choline. And this is effective egg ingestion on TMAO in humans, a randomized controlled dose response study. And let's see how high it gets. So remember, in the Cleveland Clinic study, they're using choline bisulfate. Here they're using eggs. And this is a dose, this is a number of eggs, 0, 1, 2, 4, 6. And these are individual people. So first of all, the top of the vertical axis is 20 micromolar here. And when we were looking at this study, the vegans and vegetarians were getting a mean of 27 micromolar after taking 450 milligrams of choline from choline bisulfate. And no one in this study, even if they get a high TMAO response, except subject number 4, is getting even up to 20 micromolar. Now, one egg yolk has, on average, 136 milligrams of choline in it, mostly from phosphatidylcholine, but not completely. And so if you go, so 450, just 4 eggs is Let's just put this into Google. It's higher than that. So 136 times 4 is 544 milligrams of choline. So subject number 4, who has the highest TMAO response, when subject number 4 gets 544 milligrams of choline from phosphatidylcholine, that subject is still only at 15 micromolar TMAO, and they have a very high response. So 2 eggs is 200 plus 70, so 272 milligrams of choline, and 2 eggs is giving this person 10 micromolar at the peak response. And so even subject 4, who has the highest TMAO accumulation out of anyone in response to the eggs, could eat 4 eggs, could eat 6 eggs a day just by separating 2 eggs at a time, and they would probably, look at what 2 eggs is doing to them. 1 egg did absolutely nothing, and 2 eggs barely budged this TMAO nowhere near 20 micromolar, nowhere near 10. And so even this person who was the most likely to generate TMAO out of any of these subjects could have just eaten 2 eggs a few times a day and never generated much TMAO from it. And and so I want to make sure I have time to answer questions, so I'm going to try to speed through this. I'm going to try to speed through this faster. So these are urinary excretion. Okay, so what I just wanted to show was looking at this compared to some seafoods. Oh, that doesn't have eggs on it. Okay, so we have eggs here. It's been years since I wrote these articles, so I'm trying to find the best one. Well, first of all, check out these. If you Google Maxford on choline, you'll probably find these. One's does dietary choline to contribute to heart disease, and the other one is called does carnitine from red meat contribute to heart disease through intestinal bacterial metabolism to TMAO. I could have sworn I had eggs on here somewhere in response to fish. But in any case, the fish are generating 6, 8, 10,000 TMA plus TMAO in the urine. This does not control directly to the plasma response of TMAO, but we can compare it to eggs, which were generating in the 100 to 150 mark. So these foods, these fish foods, are generating 100 to 150 mark is over here, and they're generating in the multi-thousands mark. So fish has to be much worse than eggs in terms of TMAO exposure. Anyways, if you look at these egg responses, most of these people can eat 6 eggs at a time, and they're getting maximum 10 micromolar, but usually way under that. Like this person, and this person. So half these people are eating 6 eggs at a time, getting nowhere near the TMAO response. If they're eating 4 eggs, which is more choline than from choline bisulfate, only a couple of these people are reaching 10 to 20 micromolar. And we're looking at 20 to 30 micromolar being the beginning of where the clotting risk starts. So in sum, and I'm gonna head to the live chat real quick now for 6 minutes. But in sum, what's generally happening here is choline salts are releasing free choline in the gut, which is more likely to overwhelm the capacity to absorb it, reach the choline, and be metabolized by gut bacteria into TMA, which is converted to TMAO in the liver, and thus increasing plasma TMAO. When you consume phosphatidylcholine, which is the main food form, you have better absorption and therefore it doesn't reach the colon. Also, when you eat smaller doses, you have more complete absorption, and so none of it reaches the gut. And I think that's why if you look at, well, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but if you look at that subject who had the biggest TMAO response, if they ate 1 egg, they didn't get any TMAO response at all, even over the course of 24 hours. And if they ate 2, they got barely perceptible movement of TMAO, and that's because they're even over the long term, because none of it's reaching the gut when you keep the dose low enough to promote complete absorption. So the key protected aspects are eat food, or if you don't eat food, consume phosphatidylcholine supplements. And when you do, you have to multiply the dose by 0.13 in order to get the amount of choline you're getting from them. But use that instead of choline salts. And then, if you really want to be picky about it, measure your TMAO levels and consume a dose of those foods that does not generate TMAO above 10 to 20 micromolar, assuming that that gives you a good window against the 20 to 30 mark where the risk starts increasing. And then, if you don't want to test it, just like eat 2 eggs at a time and separate them by 5 or more hours. And even if you have a gut that promotes a lot of TMAO generation potential, you probably won't generate too much TMAO from it. If you want to be in a 2-hour Q&A with me that I'm going to join in 4 minutes, see the chat or the description for a link where you can sign up for that. Bruce says, hey, Chris, MasterPass is mostly for US things. That's actually not true. There is a link. If you email support@chrismasterjohnphd.com, ask for a list of the ones that qualify for the European Union or international. You're in Australia, so international. Most of those things, not all of them, but I have a list of things that are international. Most of them are international. Some of them are not. And Blue Blocks is one that is actually in Australia. And there are ways to get around not companies that don't ship internationally. But that's all explained in what my customer support will send you if you ask. RTL says, thanks for being incredibly responsive. Your channel is the best health research, nutrition, science channel on YouTube. Thank you. John Gregory says, betaine as well. I don't know. I haven't seen betaine studied in response to TMAO, or if I have, I forgot about it. So off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Can vegans, Scott Trahan says, can vegans be deficient in choline? Anyone can be deficient in choline. Search Google Master John choline database for choline and betaine in foods. Bruce says, thanks. Expanding on my question from the other day, would you use alpha-GPC as a general choline source, or is phosphatidylcholine from food always superior? Is alpha-GPC only used for nootropics, performance gain, etc.? I would only use alpha-GPC for cognitive enhancement and power enhancement. Cognitive enhancement over long-term regular use, and power enhancement as a pre-workout. That's because it's 10 times more effective than any other choline source at generating acetylcholine, and there's no other particular reason to use it as a source of choline. There are small amounts of alpha-GPC in foods. My choline database does break down the different forms of choline. You can actually search foods and rank them by alpha-GPC content if you go there. But it's not a major form in food, so I would use phosphatidylcholine as the default for no particular purpose other than to get the choline requirement, because that's the major form found in food. Scott Trahan says, won't the gut microbiome change over time as a response to eating eggs and start producing TMAO more efficiently? Yes, but if you look at that study, the effect was mostly maxed out after 1 month. Also, most people eat eggs, and so the average person recruited for that egg study was eating all the things that the Cleveland Clinic is saying raises gut microbiome TMAO production. Okay, I'm gonna have to do the last question just because I have to run to my membership Q&A. But Jody Faye says, work out at least 4 times a week with cardio and muscle in the gym. Oh, well, you sound very healthy, Jody, so I don't think you need to do anything. All right, I do have to run. Hopefully I can stay on for a little longer tomorrow. But love you guys. It was great to see you. And hope maybe some of you can make it to the MasterPass Q&A, but that's where I'm going right now. So take care, guys.